So I've owned the Q3 43 now kind of since it came out basically, and I've had some time to test it out for personal shoots, for weddings and for commercial work. And I kind of wanted to sort of share my thoughts and feelings on it. And I've sort of settled on the fact that it's not quite for me, but I wanted to share why and why it may be or may not be for you. I want to start this by saying that this is all like super subjective and it's just my opinion and thoughts on how this camera works for me. And like the only real way you'll suss out if this is for you is if you get one in your hands and actually have a proper go with it, because you can watch endless videos of like this on the internet, but without actually having a go, it's hard to really know if it's going to fit your workflow. But yeah, with that being said, I'll dive into kind of what drew me to this camera, what I've loved about it, and what I've not kind of loved about it, and what sort of pushed me towards wanting to sell it. So why did I get the Q3 43? I got it because I love the Q3, and I love the Q3 specifically for wedding photography. It's subtle, it looks smart, I love the images, they're absolutely beautiful, and yeah, I've just loved using the Q3, and I thought that this was going to sit as a perfect kind of companion to that, you know, being the same kind of camera with a 43mm fixed lens instead of a 28. When the Q3 43 came out, I thought, well, maybe I could just shoot weddings with Q3s. You know, I love how small they are and how simple they are to use. So I thought if I could have two, maybe that would be a perfect combination for wedding photography while keeping it subtle, but not losing any sort of, not sacrificing image quality or anything like that. I'm very fortunate that this is my job, and I'm able to afford cameras like this, because it's not lost on me that this is a very expensive camera, and you know, I saved up and moved some money from different bits of kit to be able to afford this. And you know, I work professionally in photography, so kind of if I was going to buy something like this, it was going to serve a real purpose for me. And I know these cameras are a real luxury, and it's not necessarily something I'd recommend to someone just starting out. But I'm sort of 8-9 years into photography now, and I'm kind of looking for kit that sort of matches how I'm shooting and what the kind of images I'm trying to get, and something that pushes me kind of creatively in that respect. So that's kind of why I ended up going for something like this. So what have I enjoyed about the Q3 43? Just like the Q3, I've loved the user experience of this camera, the dials, the simplicity, how compact it is, but it's still a 61 megapixel full frame camera. You know, you have something small and compact, but you're not sacrificing on image quality, and that's really important to me as a professional photographer. 43mm is really lovely. It's a great sort of middle ground between 35 and 50, which are two focal lengths that I really love, and it pairs really nicely with a 28, so you've kind of got that wider and slightly tighter focal length. I tend to shoot weddings between 24 and 70mm, like generally that's kind of my range, and so these two cameras with being 61 megapixel kind of fit that quite well for me. 43 as a focal length also is lovely. You can kind of photograph anything with that, bar like tight interior spaces. Like I think it's a perfect focal length for portraits or details or things like that, and it's a really flattering focal length for taking pictures of people. I think the autofocus on this camera is really accurate. I think like the Q3, particularly in AFS, the autofocus is quick, snappy, and really accurate. It's great for everyday photography, out on the streets. It's lightweight and discreet, but you don't sacrifice image quality. The camera is weather resistant. I think it's IP52 rating, so it's sort of resistant to dust and splashes of water, which is kind of reassuring when you're out in the elements and you're in a wedding and it starts raining and you're worried about your camera. Like this makes it a bit more reassuring to use this in sort of poorer weather conditions. Often with Leica M lenses, if you're familiar with those, they often can't focus that closely, and so the Qs have like this macro mode that you can switch to, which on the Q3 allows you to focus to 17 centimeters, and on the Q3 43 you can get to 27 centimeters, which is great if you want to get any details or sort of just like get closer to your subject. The camera, like the Q3, is very quiet. It's just a really subtle tick as you press the shutter, and I think that's kind of an understated feature of cameras, and it being quiet kind of means that it's very subtle. You're not super intrusive on the situation. You know, sometimes when I'm shooting with my Sony cameras in a quiet chapel, I'm aware that the shutter is loud and people can hear it. And you know, whilst people kind of expect to hear camera sounds at weddings, I kind of would love to avoid that situation where possible and be as sort of unobtrusive as possible. So I love how quiet this camera is. It's also great if like you're taking photos of friends and family, because it doesn't feel as like intrusive. They might even, if like there's laughter and chatter happening, they might not even hear the sound of the shutter, which is I think really great, and means you can capture sort of moments without interrupting them. Like the Q3, I love the tilt screen. It's like really handy if you kind of want to shoot from the hip or be a bit more subtle on the street, or if you want to tilt it that way and sort of get up high and look down. It's much more easy to kind of get the shots you want than having a fixed screen like they did have on the Q2. And I also love the USB-C slot. It's great like if you're on the go and you want to just take a small charger and cable, rather than taking the sort of charging brick. And it's also great for offloading images. I'll get into it later, but we'll chat about the one card slot situation. But one way that I've kind of been getting around that is by just going straight into the camera to sort of avoid the card going in and out. So I use the USB-C slot to offload pictures straight to my computer. And found that to be really good and pretty quick. Okay, so what have I not loved about the Q3-43? I think one of the major letdowns for me of this camera is the continuous and tracking autofocus. I think it's good, and I think like it's 95% there, but if a couple was walking down the aisle towards me, I wouldn't be filled with confidence that this camera is gonna nail the shot. And plenty of photographers before me and even now are nailing those photos with manual focus or with AFS, and it's not essential, but it's something I've kind of grown comfortable in having. And it's really dependent on where you're kind of coming from from an autofocus standpoint and whether it's important to you. But for me, sometimes having a reliable continuous autofocus is important. So it's worth thinking about. I think in AFS this is brilliant, and like it's absolutely great, and I've used this camera in AFS at weddings or in work situations and been really happy with it. But when it comes to tracking and continuous, it's not been quite for me. The one card slot thing of the Qs is, I think, kind of their Achilles heel, to be honest. I think if they had a secondary card slot or even just a micro SD card slot, you'd feel a lot more, or some internal storage ideally, you'd feel a lot more reassured when you were shooting these on professional jobs. Cards are really reliable these days, and so is data recovery methods and things like that, but it's always in the back of my mind when I'm using the Qs, like, what if the card fails? What if something happens? It's a trade-off that you're going to kind of make for using a camera like this and having a camera this small, but it's something to consider if you're using this in a professional setting. I tested the camera out briefly for video. It was part of a client project where we were photographing property on Sky, and I was doing some location videos for them. And the footage grades nicely. It's really nice. L-log is beautiful. I don't think this camera is kind of geared towards video, but I guarantee someone's out there making something absolutely beautiful with it. The footage is lovely, and it just requires a bit more. Just requires some work and some consideration on your shooting, but I think it has all the ingredients to get good footage, but it's just not really kind of geared towards that. To elaborate, why do I not think this camera is for me, but it could be for you? For me, the camera has to fit into one of three roles. It needs to be a personal photography camera, it needs to be a wedding photography camera, or it needs to be a commercial photography camera. And that's purely because that's the disciplines that I kind of photograph for. For personal photography, I realized I prefer 28, or I prefer to go a bit tighter and go to 50mm. But 28 for day-to-day stuff and photographing my friends and family kind of feels a bit more natural. I can get closer to my subjects. 28 just gives me a bit more versatility as well. And cropping on the Q3 in camera or in post is great, and you have a lot more potential to get tighter images if you want to, but it gives you that wider image to start with. For weddings, I thought shooting with 2 Qs was really going to work. The images were great, but I just didn't love it, and didn't love the continuous autofocus. And the one thing that I was kind of really hoping from the Q3 and the Q3-43 is that the images would tie up well together. And for me personally, I found that the Q3-43 had a bit of a slightly different color shift to the Q3, and because of that, I kind of was grading each one separately and individually, and it sort of defeated the object for me of having two of the same kind of cameras. So yeah, that was something to consider, and not something I was expecting. I think the color shift comes from the lens. But yeah, it was noticeably different, and I had to sort of rework some of the files, particularly the blues. I noticed like the blues seemed quite different between the Q3 and the Q3-43. For commercial work, I actually think this camera makes a lot of sense. You know, if you've got a bigger rig or bigger system and you want something small, lightweight for behind the scenes shots or quick snapshots, this is a great camera for that. It's a very easy camera to pick up or to hand to someone else. You know, they'll quickly get to grips with it and probably love using it. So from that perspective, it's a great camera to have on commercial shoots. And I also think it could be a great A cam for commercial shoots if you didn't need wide shots. The lens is super sharp, and yeah, the image quality is fantastic. So, you know, you've got a 61 megapixel full frame camera in a very small body with a beautiful lens and very sharp lens. So you'd get fantastic imagery using this for commercial work. I guess for me though, you know, I prefer the versatility of having a wider camera for behind the scenes shots. And I also prefer the versatility of having a wide camera for commercial work in general, because I do a lot of interiors and properties in my commercial work. So having 28mm makes a little bit more sense to me. I would probably gravitate towards another camera with the ability to change lenses for commercial work as my A cam. So yeah, that's something to consider. So I feel like I've taken some photos I really love with this camera, and I think whilst it is an amazing camera and beautifully made and the images are stunning, it's just not quite fit into my workflow in the way I kind of hoped it would. Because of that, you know, it's a lot of money to have tied up in a camera, and because it's not kind of working for me, I will be selling it, but yeah, I'll definitely be sad to let it go. And I don't think this is a bad camera by any means. I think it's a fantastic camera. It's just not quite fit into my workflow how I kind of envisaged. But I think if you love like 35 and 50 millimeters for day-to-day photography, and you want a camera that's small, beautiful, subtle, quiet, creates incredible images, and you've got the budget for it, like, this is a beautiful camera, and I would recommend giving it a go. But yeah, thanks so much for listening, and yeah, I hope you enjoyed listening to my thoughts on this camera.